Found Duckling by EvaDragon. Chapter 6. Justice League Meet Phantom. Summary. Constantine summons the High King of the Infinite Realms. Danny knew there was something he was forgetting to tell the bats. "Oh hey, Batman and co. Fancy seeing you here." "What in the ever-loving shite is this, mate?" Constantine screeched. Half of the League's present members turned to look at him in confusion. "You mean to tell me that the U.S. blood government has all but declared war on the Infinite Realms, and we let them?" What? Batman grunted out. Red Robin, Red Hood, and Nightwing all looked appropriately horrified. "Explain." "So the Infinite Realms is the glue between all the dimensions. It holds the multiverse together. It's also where all the afterlives are. Hell, heaven, Valhalla, every afterlife of every religion, of every dimension. They all exist there in the Infinite Realms. These beings called ghosts are more than likely denizens of the Infinite Realms. These beings are exceptionally powerful on their own and have a base power set: flight, intangibility, and invisibility. After that, each being has individualized power sets. These anti-ecto control acts and the Ghost Investigation Ward is basically the U.S. government declaring war on the denizens of the Infinite Realms." Every League member present blanched. Danny had been vivisected by these bastards. They had to be taken down. Batman began the meeting with a presentation that Red Robin had helped him build. Horror, anger, and rage built on the member faces as he went through his presentation. Danny had gifted him a USB drive that had contained most of the GIW logs of their experimentation. There was one log that Danny had asked him to leave out. After watching on the Bat computer, Batman had quickly agreed. It was a log containing Phantom's vivisection and other experiments that they had run on him while they had him in captivity. Batman wished he hadn't watched that particular log. Danny had warned him. Batman had almost been sick. Batman had been very, very carefully hiding that log. He knew that Red Robin would snoop. Red Robin didn't need to see that particular log. Several of the League members asked pertinent questions. Batman and Robin fielded those as best they could. Constantine was stewing. Zatanna and Captain Marvel weren't far behind. Dr. Fate was surprisingly quiet, but eventually they had a plan. The Lanterns would take this before Oa, since this was an interdimensional case. Oa would have precedence over the case against the GIW. Wonder Woman and Aquaman would head to the UN to forcefully put pressure on the U.S. Superman would have Clark Kent and Lois Lane write articles in the Daily Planet. This would help get the public on the side of the ghosts. The public loved nothing more than to decry what they believed violated basic rights. It was why the Meta Protection Acts had been passed in the first place. "What we really need to do is summon the Ghost King to make sure that he's not going to have our heads," Constantine said as the meeting was drawing to a close. "The Ghost King?" Red Robin squeaked out. Danny hadn't mentioned anything about a Ghost King. "Oh, sure, mate. So, each area of the Infinite Realms has its own ruler. Like hell is ruled over by Satan, heaven by God, etc. All of those fall under the purview of the High King of the Infinite Realms. Now, the last king, Pariah Dark, was a bloody wanker, a real tyrant. Took a mess of the stronger denizens to lock him in what was called the sarcophagus of forever sleep. Then about a year ago, some bloody idiot released the mad tyrant. Don't know how we..." And here, Constantine stopped his rant and drawing of a summoning circle to sweep his arm at the gathered members of the Justice League and the Justice League Dark. "Didn't hear about this. Pulled a whole damn town into the Infinite Realms for 3 whole weeks, it did." Batman, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Red Robin paled even further, if that were possible. They had a sneaking suspicion they knew exactly which town Constantine was talking about. Batman was already investigating to see if the GLA had received any calls from Amity Park. When that town blipped back into existence, Pariah Dark had been defeated in single combat, thus a new High King of the Infinite Realms crowned. Constantine sat back and looked over his summoning circle with an appraising eye. The new king had a rather odd circle, and this had been the first time Constantine had drawn it. He wanted to make sure that it was accurate. He began chanting in a language that wasn't quite Latin, but wasn't quite any other language that could be easily identified either. It was on the third iteration of whatever Constantine was speaking that Red Robin finally clocked the language. He leaned over to Nightwing, Hood, and Batman. He's speaking in Esperanto. It's basically a dead language. Not many people speak these days, the vigilante whispered. The air swirled and the temperature dropped. The sound of ice breaking crackled throughout the room. A portal opened in the ground, and a Lazarus green swirled where the summoning circle once was. Hood tensed, and Nightwing clamped his hand on his brother's shoulder. A white-booted foot stepped through the portal, followed by a second foot. The torso followed. A stylized DP in silver was on the chest plate of black armor. There were neon green highlights running down the side of the pants. Finally, the being's head popped into existence. The being appeared to be a youngish male. He had ethereally white hair and the same green as the portal eyes. He wore white fingerless gloves and wore a cape that looked like a starlit sky with swirls of galaxies imprinted on it. His crown floated on top of his head and looked like a cross between the aurora and glacial ice. On his right hand was a simple silver ring and black ring that looked to be made of the same material as the crown. "Be welcome, Your Majesty, High King Phantom." Constantine spoke as the portal closed. The four bats went completely still. Thanks," Phantom said nervously. His hand came up to his neck in the familiar, nervous gesture. Hood groaned. Phantom's head swiveled towards the bats. "Oh! Hiya, Batman, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin," Phantom cheerily chirped.
"You're a king?
Hood deadpanned. Phantom nodded.
Of an entire dimension?"
Phantom nodded again. "I may have neglected to mention this." Phantom shuffle floated nervously, his hand repeating the neck-rubbing movement.
"Fuck, you're killing me, kid. Again."
Hood made an aborted motion to rub his face, but realized that he couldn't with his helmet on. Red Robin looked like he was going to kill someone, possibly Phantom. Nightwing looked like he wanted to take Phantom and lock him in a blanket vault. Batman looked like, well, Batman. "You've met High King Phantom, Batman?" Wonder Woman asked, trying to establish some diplomacy. "It's because of Phantom that we were made aware of both the Anti-Ecto Control Acts and the Ghost Investigation Ward," Batman said after a few deep breaths. The sound of silence invaded the conference room. Constantine inhaled and choked on his cigarette. Most of the Leaguers present were already pale, so Batman wasn't sure if was it possible for them to get any paler, but most of them gave it a valiant effort anyways. "Please be assured, King Phantom, that we are working on taking down both the Axe and the GIW, Wonder Woman said, again trying to establish diplomacy. "Oh, you can just call me Phantom. I don't technically stand on all the formal stuff, and technically I'm more like a crown prince, since I've only been a ghost for like 2 years now. By ghost standards, I'm like a baby ghost." Phantom laughed, and Nightwing made a pained noise at the back of his throat. "The council agreed that I wouldn't formally take the crown until I was 100 years dead." Nightwing made another pained noise. Red Robin mimicked it. "It's fine, that's fine. That means I still get him for another 97, 98 years. Red Robin thought to himself, trying to keep himself from spiraling into a panic attack. He felt Hood's and Nightwing's hands clamp on his shoulders, which helped to ground him. Realistically, he knew that his brother had died, half died. But seeing and hearing Phantom speak so easily of his death was not something Red Robin or any of the Bat Clan took lightly. I see, Phantom. How did you become aware of the axe in the GIW? Wonder Woman asked as she indicated for Phantom to take a seat. They operated out of the town I claimed as my haunt, Amity Park, Illinois, Phantom replied. And why was Amity Park claimed as your haunt? Apparently, Wonder Woman was the designated question asker. I had, until recently, living relatives and friends there. Don't worry, they're still there. But Amity Park is no longer safe for me due to the presence of the GIW. Phantom replied sagely. I see, and were your friends and relatives aware of your presence? Wonder Woman continued asking. That is a difficult question. The younger generation, meaning those younger than around 25, saw me as a hero. Those older would call me a menace. My living sister and 2 of my friends would aid me when other denizens of the realms would become unruly. Phantom responded while also trying to preserve his status as a Haffa. And these other denizens, did they cause trouble often? That is also a difficult question. Ghost culture is one of strength. Fighting is like saying hello. Ghosts must also indulge in their obsessions in order to be anchored to the living realm. Most of the ghosts who came into Amity Park were just curious. Some of the more dangerous ones didn't realize that humans were so squishy, but they didn't mean harm. Not truly. Most of the ghosts didn't realize that I was a baby ghost and didn't know that I had no clue what I was doing. That's not to say that some of the ghosts just didn't care. But the same could be said for humans, can it not? There are humans who are trying to get through their life, while there are also humans who are capable of evil, Phantom explained. Were there no others capable of fighting against the ones who wanted to cause trouble? Wonder Woman asked, a tinge of sadness in her voice. At first it was myself and my previously mentioned team. There were a couple of scientists. Phantom spat the term like it offended him. The bats could understand why. Their so-called scientists developed anti-ecto weapons that could be used against the ghost. By your laws and standards, however, these weapons would be considered inhumane and cruel at best. These scientists are convinced that ghosts are nothing more than posthumous human consciousness and or emotion imprinted on ectoplasm at the time of a human's death. They were so convinced that ghosts couldn't feel pain that were not sentient or sapient. Phantom could feel his eyes start to glow at the memory of what the Fentons had done to him, of what he'd had to listen to, of the threats he'd heard in the last year, of how the Fentons wanted to tear Phantom apart molecule by molecule. Red Robin got up from his seat and placed a steadying hand on Phantom's shoulder. It was because of these scientists that the Anti-Ecto Control Acts were written. They're working with the GIW. Phantom, were you ever hurt by either the GIW or these scientists? Wonder Woman asked, her voice so soft and tender. Phantom wanted to say no. They were still, even after what they'd done, what they'd allowed to happen, they were still his parents. Phantom wanted to defend them. Yes. At first the scientists were terrible shots, the male more so than the female. But they got better over the last year. He found himself saying instead, the GIW were always idiots. Couldn't hit the side of a brick barn. Phantom snorted. But 4 months ago, the female shot me with an electrified net. They turned me over to the GIW. I was held in captivity for a few days. I won't speak as to what was done to me while I was there. Maybe later if you need it for like a court case or something. Phantom, what are the names of these scientists? Wonder Woman asked, still in the same tender voice. Phantom felt his tongue burn as he blurted out, Jack and Mandy Fenton, but please understand their older daughter was part of my team. She is innocent. Tears began streaming down Phantom's face at the betrayal, but oddly enough his core began thrumming at the thought that those posers were finally about to get their comeuppance. Thank you, Phantom, Wonder Woman said kindly, effectively ending the meeting and dismissing the League members present. But now Phantom had another problem. He couldn't exactly get home the same way. Constantine had fucked off as soon as Wonder Woman had dismissed them, and the summoning circle had been broken when Phantom accidentally stepped through. His porting skills were not up to par, so that meant that he could end up anywhere or any when. So he floated behind his only known contacts on how to get back to Earth, which had been a whole ordeal in and of itself. Because they were on the Watchtower, the super secret Justice League base that was in space, Phantom had vibrated and glowed for a whole hour once he realized that he was in space. Hood, Nightwing, and Red Robin were all laughing at him, with his face glued to the window. There might have even been a ghost, of a smile on Batman's face. Phantom left face smudges on the window. Come on, Phantom. Once we get to the Zeta Tube, we'll make sure that no one is around. You can transform back to Danny, and we can teleport into the Batcave, Red Robin said as he gently grabbed Phantom's hand and pulled him along like a balloon. Phantom only nodded, barely cognizant of the fact that he was being gently led away from the windows that led to space. It wasn't until they got to the area that housed the Zeta Tube that Phantom finally came back to himself, and then his face flushed green, which caused his freckles to light up. I've never noticed that your freckles look like constellations. Phantom approached the Zeta Tubes with trepidation. The closer he got, the more he dug in his metaphorical heels. He let his transformation was over him, and then he dug in his physical heels as well. He started to hyperventilate, his breaths becoming more shallow as they got closer. Phantom, what's wrong? Red Robin asked coaxingly, still trying to pull him to the tube. I can't. Portal accident died. And then Danny wasn't breathing. Oh shit, fuck. Danny, breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Come on, breathe with me, Nightwing said as he held his newest brother and talked him through his very real panic attack. They stood in an enclave off to the side of the area where the tubes were located. It took the better part of half an hour before Nightwing was able to calm Danny down. You back with us, little ghosty? Danny nodded. Nightwing hummed. I can promise you that no one has ever died in the Zeta Tube. It might feel a little weird, but you're not going to die. Promise? And damn if his voice didn't sound so small and vulnerable. Promise, buddy. If you want, you can even hold onto one of our hands. Nightwing hated the tremor in Danny's voice and hands as he reached for Red Robin. Red Robin took his brother's hands and led him to the Zeta Tube. Danny was still wary of the teleportation device. Danny would later admit that it felt weird, but it would be a weird he could get used to. They came out in the promised Batcave. Danny saw stars, not literally, but his eyes sparkled in awe, even without transforming back into Phantom. He floated around the cave. Is that a dinosaur? A freaking giant penny? Well, at least Danny was back to vibrating and glowing. Hey, quick question. How am I getting home? The 4 bats exchanged a quick look, and then Batman nodded. Red Robin took off his mask. That explains so much. You don't have questions? Tim asked as he strode over to Danny. Maybe, sort of, not really. It explains why Jason and Red Hood both felt the same, and why I felt the same sense of safety from both the bats and you as the Waynes. Bruce, Dick, and Jason, all out of their suits, take a moment to process what Danny said. That made sense. Master Tim, Master Danny, is Miss... Oh, where did you go, Master Danny? Your work called, and they said they thought you'd been kidnapped, Alfred said after he took a moment to calm himself down, seeing that his newest grandchild was in the cave. I was summoned to space, Danny said with his familiar neck-rubbing gesture. What he means is that Constantine summoned the Ghost King, High King Phantom, to the Watchtower about the Anti-Ecto Control Acts and the GIW. Conveniently forgot to tell us that he was the Ghost King. We brought him home by Zeta, Tim said with a hint of sarcasm. Ah, Alfred replied calmly. It took a lot to fluster the longtime butler/grandfather of the Wayne family, but he quickly recovered. Danny, we didn't mean to tell you this quickly. We were hoping to give you a few more days to settle in, Dick said. I mean, I get it. Secret Identities 101, Danny replied, taking everything in stride. Dick, Jason, Bruce, and Tim were surprised at how well Danny was taking the review. Can I ask you a question? How did no one ever connect you with Phantom? It's just a simple palette swap. Tim let his voice fade. Well, Phantom is a ghost. It's not just a play on words. Danny's alive. According to Frostbite, my Yeti ghost doctor, Danny totally missed the look that passed between the four bats. He also missed Dick mouthing the words Yeti ghost doctor to the other bats. Havas like me are exceptionally rare. Like once every few millennia type of rare. There was one guy back home that connected the dots, so to speak, but no one really listened to him. Jazz found out on her own, but that's how she became part of Team Phantom. Tucker and Sam were there the day this happened. And before you ask, I really don't want to talk about it right now. I can explain tomorrow at breakfast. Also, asking ghosts how they died is considered really rude. I think that young Master Danny has had enough excitement for the day. Master Danny, if you will follow me, I will show you how to get back up to the manor, Alfred said, stopping any further questioning. Danny smiled gratefully at his newfound grandfather and shuffled after him. So that just happened, Jason said to no one in particular. Notes. Constantine, I choose you. Phantom. Phantom. Oh, hi, Bats. Red Robin, I'm gonna kill him. Again. Wonder Woman, Your Majesty, please don't kill us. Phantom, why would I do that?